The first house. Darkness in the mountains. My job often takes me traveling. Sometimes Europe, sometimes the United States. But that trip to the Adirondack Mountains was something else entirely. It was autumn. The trees were drenched in burning shades of orange and red, as if the entire forest was on fire. I had booked a secluded wooden cabin, hidden deep within the woods. The road leading there was long and silent, lined with dense trees on both sides. The first night was fine, but the silence, it was too much. It was the kind of silence that feels louder than noise. When I went to sleep that night, I felt like someone was walking inside the house. The faint creaking of the wooden floor echoed in the dark. I convinced myself it was just the wind. But when I opened my eyes, the door to my room was half open. And beyond it, darkness stood still. The next morning I went out for a jog. But the entire time, I had the unsettling feeling that something was watching me from behind the trees. Every time I stopped and turned back, the forest just stared at me. When I returned, the house felt wrong. The walls seemed to breathe. Sometimes dishes clattered in the kitchen, sometimes footsteps echoed from upstairs. I kept telling myself, it's just your imagination. But imagination doesn't open doors. Around midnight, I went downstairs, and that moment changed everything. A man was standing in the kitchen, completely still, like he was part of the house itself. His eyes were fixed on me, but he didn't blink. I turned on the light. His face became clear. Messy hair, a body covered in mud, and a strange, unsettling smile. Then he ran, but the way he moved, it wasn't human. It was as if something was dragging itself across the floor. I ran back to my room, locked the door, and grabbed my phone. But on the line, there was only a voice. "You came back." I kept screaming, as if the door shook under heavy force. And then, sirens. The police arrived. They slowly opened the door. They stood there, staring at each other, their faces unusually serious. One officer said quietly, "We suspected someone might be living here illegally, but for this long, without leaving any trace." I was still trembling. My breathing was uneven, like my body hadn't escaped the terror yet. They gave me water, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the glass. "Where is he?" I asked weakly. The officer looked toward the kitchen, then shook his head. "No one's there." My heart stopped. "But he was here before you came. He was breaking the door." My voice turned into a scream. They searched the entire house. Every room, every corner, even the basement, nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry, no evidence of another person. Just one thing. Mud stains on the kitchen floor. The same mud that covered his body. The police said I might have been overthinking. But as they were leaving, one officer stopped. He showed me an old black and white photograph. This house used to belong to a man. He suddenly disappeared. People said he died in the forest. But his body was never found. I looked at the picture, and my breath froze. The same face, the same messy hair, the same disturbing smile. I left that place immediately, returned to the city the very next day. But the story didn't end there. A few days later, I checked the footage on my camera. There was a clip that I never recorded. In the video, I was asleep, and outside the door, he was standing there, slowly. He walked inside. He stood beside my bed. And then, he looked at the camera and smiled. At the end of the video, his voice whispered, "You can leave this place, but this place will never leave you." Even today, when the night grows too quiet, I hear it again. The creaking of wooden floors, footsteps behind me, And sometimes, in the mirror, he stands behind me, smiling. Now I want to tell you the second story. That incident is somewhat similar and based on reality. The second house. The reflection in the lake. There are places in this world where time seems to stand still, where silence is not merely the absence of sound, but a presence, unseen, yet deeply felt. This story isn't mine. It belongs to those moments that taught me that some doors should never be opened. The second house. The reflection in the lake. My job took me traveling once again, this time to a remote place where there was an old lake, calm, clear, and unnaturally silent. People said the place was beautiful, but no one ever stayed there for long. I booked a small wooden cabin right on the edge of the lake. In front of the cabin was the water, and beyond it, a dense, shadowed forest. When I arrived, the sun was setting. The sky burned red, and the lake reflected it like a flawless mirror. Everything felt perfect, almost too perfect. The first night was uneventful, but around midnight, I woke up suddenly. There was a sound from the water, as if someone was slowly walking through the lake. I went to the window. It was dark outside, but faint ripples moved across the surface. I told myself, it's just the wind. But wind doesn't leave footsteps in water. The next morning, I walked to the edge of the lake. The water was crystal clear, but so clear that I could see all the way to the bottom. And then I saw something. A face beneath the water. I stepped back in shock. But when I looked again, there was nothing. Just my own reflection. I let out a quiet laugh. You're just tired. It's nothing. The day passed, but an uneasy feeling stayed with me. Every time I went near the lake, it felt as though something was watching me from below, waiting. Night fell, and this time, the sound was clearer. Splash, 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 as if something was emerging from the water. I gathered the courage and opened the door. Outside, on the damp ground by the lake, there were footprints. They led straight toward my cabin. My heart began to race. I slowly followed the tracks. They reached the door and ended there, as if something had come inside. I shut the door and turned around. The air inside felt heavy with moisture, and on the floor, there were drops of water, one by one, leading toward my bedroom. I opened the door, and there she was. A girl. Her long hair clung to her face, water dripping from her body, and her eyes, they were empty, yet fixed directly on me. Who are you? My voice trembled. She said nothing. Then slowly she lowered her head, and in a broken voice she whispered, "You saw me." My breath caught. In the water. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped. Moisture spread across the walls, and water began to gather on the floor. She took a step closer. "Now, you will see too." I ran. I threw the door open and rushed outside. But outside, the lake had changed. The water had turned black. And within it, there were dozens of faces, all staring at me, all calling me. Behind me, she stood. "No one leaves this place," she whispered. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath my feet. I fell into the lake. The water was freezing cold. I tried to rise, but hands emerged from below. Dozens of hands. They grabbed me, pulled me down into the depths. The next morning, people found the cabin empty. The door was open. The floor was wet. And the lake was calm again, as if nothing had ever happened. Sometimes, when the sun sets and the water becomes still like a mirror, People say they see a new face in the lake. A face staring up, as if begging for help. And maybe that face is mine. Now we move on to the third story. And this one is even stranger. The third place. The silent hallway. She was a college student, alone, hardworking, and full of dreams. Her name was Emily. She had been accepted into a university far from home. The campus assigned her a dormitory. A very old building worn down by time, its walls carrying years of silent history. People called it peaceful, but some girls never stayed there for long. Emily was assigned room 307, third floor. At the very end of a long, empty hallway. The first night felt normal. Soft sounds, doors closing, faint whispers from other rooms. But after 2 a.m., everything went completely silent, so silent that even the sound of her own breathing started to feel unfamiliar. Emily couldn't sleep. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, when suddenly, knock, knock, knock. A sound at the door. She froze. Who could it be at this hour? She slowly got up and walked toward the door, then asked softly, "Who is it?" No answer, just another knock. Knock, knock. She opened the door. Outside, the hallway was empty. Long, dim, and completely still. A single light flickered at the far end. She closed the door again. But the moment she turned around, inside the room, there were wet footprints on the floor. Her heart began to race. How? She slowly stepped back. And then she saw it in the mirror, inside the mirror. Behind her, someone was standing. A girl. Her hair covered her face, and her head was tilted at an unnatural angle. Emily immediately turned around, but there was no one there. She looked back at the mirror. The girl was still there, closer now, and her lips were moving as if she was trying to speak. Gathering all her courage, Emily whispered, "What do you want?" The girl in the mirror slowly lifted her head, and for the first time her eyes became visible. They were empty, yet filled with pain. A deep, unbearable pain. "Help me. Get out." Her voice sounded distant, as if it was coming from deep underwater. Suddenly, the lights in the room went out. Darkness swallowed everything. And then, from the hallway, came a sound. Footsteps. Running. Fast, straight toward her door. Emily tried to scream, but no sound came out. The door slowly creaked open on its own. And the girl was no longer in the mirror. She was standing at the doorway. Her clothes were soaked. Water dripping from her onto the floor. She slowly stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind her. "You opened the door," she whispered. "Now, you can't leave." The next morning, the other girls noticed that room 307 was wide open. Inside, everything was exactly as it had been. The bed, the books, her bag. But Emily was gone. Only one thing had changed. In the mirror, there were now two reflections. One of the girl, and the other was Emily. Even today, they say that at exactly 2 a.m., if someone knocks on the door of room 307, a voice answers from inside. "Who is it?" And if you open the door, the hallway will look empty. But you won't be alone. Some doors are only meant to be opened once, and some reflections stay with you forever.